Hello, so this is challenge 2 of the Flowcharts challenges, and this time we've got a sequence again, but we've got a bit more process going on. So we'll have a look. We're taking two inputs, the length and the width of a rectangle. They're both being assigned to different variables. You notice as well that we're casting here. Well, we won't actually need to do casting in the flowchart because again, flowcharts are universal. They don't have like language specific terminology, and casting might be done slightly different in other languages. So we just assume we're taking the data and whatever language you code the flowchart back into. So you can use flowchart to code a Java program or a Python program, etc. Whatever language you code it back into, you'll then use the casting syntax or the formula for casting there. Obviously in Python it's nice and simple. We put int and brackets around any input that we want to be cast into a number. And we've got a process going on here again, so we're going to use the process block. So it's very similar blocks to the previous one. I'm going to get to work now. Obviously I need my start terminator because that's very important for a flowchart. And then what I'm going to do is I am taking a data flow block for an input. So input, and again, it's going to be enter length. I'm just going to write enter length. You don't have to write the full thing for the code there. You can shorthand it. We know that this is a flowchart for calculating the area of a rectangle. And if that flowchart was given to like a development team or something or a coder, they'd know that that's what's going on. So we can just have enter length. And obviously, you can shorthand things there. I'm also going to say then I'm going to have a process. I'm going to say length equals input from previous step. And I'm just making sure. Again, I think this is a bit of an over the top kind of thing I'm doing, but it shows clearly that I understand the input is then passed to a variable, and that there is a variable. There's a piece of data, or a data object being used. And what I'm going to do, just for the sake of brevity, I'm going to now I've just copied and pasted these, as you can see, width, and width is the input from the previous step. You could probably get away without doing this, but I'm just, as I said, I'm keen to make sure that my flowchart has every possible thing added to it. And I'm just going to drag all these together just for a second because I like keeping things neat. All right, so we've got all that. And then what we're going to do is we've got a process. So area equals length times width. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a process. And I could probably get away with having all the processes in one block, but I want just a separate process, one at a time. All right, area equals length times width. And that's that line there. And again, remember, we're using a rectangle for a process being something that happens sort of automatically within the computer. And I've caused myself an issue. I'm going to get rid of this arrow because it's really doing my head in. It's off center. Right, and just put that there, and there we go, and put that there. So area is length times width. And ultimately, we've got a print now. And what that's going to be is an output, sorry, mixing my words up there, a data flow object. And I'll just say output. All right, the area is, I'm going to put a comma here, area. Now, the reason I'm putting a comma there is, although in the previous one I concatenated, area is not a string. And obviously that would be mathematically inaccurate to try and join a string to a number. It would try and use arithmetic in most programming languages. So I am just doing that. You know what? You could even do this though. You could just output area. There we go. We'll just do that. Again, try and make this flowchart as simple as possible. So I've avoided having all that faff by just writing area. And the examiner would be happy with that because it is doing exactly what the flowchart should do. It's describing the algorithm. It's not got every single finite detail of it. And remember, this is an abstraction. Flowcharts are abstractions of the algorithms themselves. But there's enough detail in the flowchart there for me to be able to rebuild that code. You know, if I understood how to write nice messages for my user, etc. Just going to try and make this full screen for a second so you can see. There we go. And that's it. So we've got start, which you don't see in the code, input enter length, which is here, and then I'm doing a process. Length equals the input from the previous step, so that's length equals, and I'm doing the same with this input. I'm then having a process for width, and then I've got another process, area equals width times length times width, sorry. Then I'm outputting area. I'm not even bothering with the message there, and I'm ending, and that will be totally fine to get full marks if that was the algorithm described. Oh, I'm getting some advertising about features. Lovely. Right, thank you for watching.